I really want to talk about Jazzfm and great content, but I'm going to do 10 minutes on a bit of research that came out of trying to work out the answers to some of the questions that have come up so far today. This isn't about, for me, discovering the future. It's about working out where we are now. And there's very few tools that most people can get hold of and say, how do the relationships work? How many people are listening to Capital, listening to Spotify, reading this, listening to their own music? And for that information to be available to anybody, whether you're a radio station, an equipment manufacturer, a new platform, and be able to do it regularly, get trend information. So we thought we'd set up a bit of research that could do that. This isn't about creating something that does what Radar does. It's about creating something that one can use, look at, and understand more the relationships. I'm going to just talk you through what all that's about. So this was specifically for radio stations, labels, publishers, and platforms. But anybody who's interested in where the world's going should be able to look at this, and it's available. And it's a syndicated service. It's completely neutral. It's not from a vested interest place. The idea is that you can buy into this and should get a lot of the answers that you need. So what is it? Well, it's an old-fashioned bit of research, so you get lots of that. And I'm not going to spend a long time on it, other than to say, for about 18 months, we worked out the right methodology to do this. And in November last year, did a big bit of work that was offline, old-fashioned face-to-face research, and an online survey. And we did a 3,000 survey and tested this in the real. And then May this year, we resorted to what we really want to do, which is just do this as an online survey. So it's replicable at a cost that's affordable, and that we can do it in lots of different countries as well. One of the key things, though, is that this is a national survey. And so as lots of radio listening is local, and there's lots of local brands, we had to find a methodology that allowed us to make sure that our market share numbers worked when you looked at it across the whole of the radio market and the whole of the audio market. And so we've used various weighting factors from Radar in order to do that. So this was about setting really a context and understanding the relationships. And we set out to do a very simple thing, and that is reach and share of ear in relationship to good old radio, online platforms, streaming services, digital downloads, and all physical formats. So anything that went into your ear, that's all this was about. So we also wanted to have a look at different formats, different music genres, and device listenership. So you could actually look at the data from any side. And we use this term a truly democratic measure. And by that, we mean we're not trying to prove a point from any part of the sector. We're just trying to understand it. That information has to be able to be cross-referenced with location data, where people are listening and for how long. Good old-fashioned stuff. Quite a lot of psychographic stuff, personality types, hobbies, interests, musical tastes. So we've got 41 music genres in here. And it's from that area that we've had quite a lot of traction from record labels, where they want to actually cross-relate platform usage with different music genres. Of course, we've got a lot of social media information on there. And we added on 58 consumer brands, because we thought it would be pretty interesting to look at this sort of information and cross-reference it with whether people are aware of a brand like Amazon, or whether they'd recommend Amazon to somebody. And so we took big consumer brands and asked people about that at the same time. The other half of the project was to, instead of land people with a whole load of data tables on their desk, come up with some tools that would allow people to look at the data in a top level sense, using a dashboard. So we created a web interface to be able to do this. This was a foolish thing to do because big new data and trying to make it look beautiful is a pretty tricky thing to do at the same time. But it worked. So I'm going to show you a few screen grabs on that and talk through some of the data, and then I look at some of the numbers in a moment. So this is a view from that tool. This is share of ear. Just under the words at the top, share of ear, reach, and demographics, there's some data sets, and the idea eventually will be you'll be able to create your own data set. You'll be able to say, I only want to look at platforms and radio stations that fit a youth demographic, and then you could just look at all the data in that way. So we've created some top-line data sets, all audio, broadcast radio, which would be similar to Radar, a subset of that commercial radio, music streaming, and then all online. And so this is the view of all audio, and it's a tree map, so as you can see, you've got Radio 2, top left. That's the biggest share. And when you float over each of these panels, you actually get the numbers. Same view, different colors, broadcast radio. And so that's a sort of radar view. And this picks up from some of the things that we talked about earlier. This is just looking at music streaming services, and you've got these three monsters that we have to deal with, iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. And they take up a vast amount of share. And what we've done with each of them is we've asked questions to get down to the audio-only part of that. And when you look at something like iTunes, we've divided it into how much time you listen to your own music and how much you listen to music streaming and how much time you listen to radio. So there's information that flows out of each of them. We've got reach of everything, and the interesting thing about looking at it this way is that in one chart you can look at old-fashioned radio and you look at lots of new platforms. So that's just a scale thing. This is a view of devices. So I've brilliantly chosen Jazzfm to get a small bit of jazz in here. Just to have a quick look at here. And so if you look, you see this is percentage of share of reach, and there's also a share of ear of this. And so by device, you should be able to understand your market better. Brand advocacy. So you can choose a market or a service, and you can have a look at the responses by brand, and you can look at it by index as well. And it's really interesting, actually. You can build up a profile of various platforms by different consumer brand. And the last one of these views is, I've picked heart here, time spent listening. And so if you look at the average daily listening time here, it's 1 hour, 5 minutes, times 7, you come up with a number that's similar to Radar. Because, of course, the only numbers that are generally known in this area are Radar numbers. So it's key that we actually looked at this against Radar, which was a sort of benchmarking what we did. And I'm just going to show you 2 charts to show how it looks against Radar. So this is a weekly reach comparison with Audiomonitor being the dark blue line and Radar being the light blue. As you can see, there's fairly good correlation on a brand-by-brand basis, with some differences. There'll always be differences. It's a completely different methodology. We're low on Radio 4, and we're pretty high on Absolute Radio. Well, maybe we knew where Absolute was going. And if you look at share, we've also got a very good correlation, and we feel pretty comfortable that at a top level, we're coming up with the right sort of mass audience for each of the radio brands. We can't look at anything else because there's no other known knowns. This work was done with this group of initial members. It's a syndicate. You can buy onto it. And everybody here were there for different reasons. Some people wanted to test it. Some people have committed for the whole year. The survey itself is going to run quarterly as from this month. We've got a number of new people who've joined us. The way people are using this is to get this top-line data, to be able to cross-reference the data, but also to ask their own confidential questions on here. We also build up groups so you can go back and interrogate, do qualitative work, essentially, with the people who've been identified here. So you can pick up people who listen to Spotify and Radio 1 and then go and talk to them afterwards. Now, in a way, I could have just put this chart up and only talked about this, because this picks up with a lot that you've heard this morning. So this is share of ear. If you look at the all-adult column, you see broadcast radio, 73% share. And I think that's similar. I think the Spotify number that was used this morning was 71%. So we're in the same sort of area. The interesting thing is to look at the 15 to 19s, where broadcast radio's got a 32% share, and actually everything else has got a 68% share. So you're looking at a group here whose share is in a very, very different place. But you look at 20 to 24s, and it's radically different. And maybe Simon's view earlier, that as people get older, and their behaviour will change and will go into a different place. A little bit like in the olden days, you knew when people would start adding in speech radio to their repertoire. Maybe broadcast radio is going to get added in a slightly different way into their repertoire. Maybe not. I don't know. But the great thing about this is that one can look at the situation right now and look at it quarterly and look at trends going through. I think it's really interesting just to look at old language like Reach and just put the new platforms alongside that and get some idea of scale. And you can take this information, you can actually produce lots of interesting images about who's doing what, where, and where the overlaps lie. The genre preferences are not surprising if you look at them just in pure demographics, but actually when you start picking a data set, people who listen to a radio station, doing something on a music platform and have a look musically where they lie, you can see quite a lot of the things that we know that are happening elsewhere. It's much less genre specific than before. Have a look at the brands. There are big differences in terms of brand awareness across brands alone and looking at different services. And it's very interesting looking at where certain brands sit with certain platforms and other brands who don't seem to have impacted at all. Now, this is slightly flippant, but it is the data that came out here, because the point about this is that you could, it's where we want to go with the data. We do want to go to the place where you go. 49% of Tumblr users were interested in an area compared with Pinterest users. And actually, quite a lot of the data that's come out of this gives one a really good view on how people are using new platforms. And it's where they think the platforms sit. It's not a technology-driven answer. Do people really know when they in their heads are saying they're listening to audio and Facebook, where the audio is coming from? No, they haven't got a clue. But for them, it's attributed to Facebook. And that's what this is all about. It's what users believe they're doing. A vast amount of data can come out of this sort of work. Now, this has got to sit alongside the real metrics that you're getting out of. If you've got your own brand metrics, it's got to sit alongside that, and it'll work quite well with that. We've also run this survey back into people's databases. So you can actually take this and run it into your own user database and produce exactly the same information in this way. And that's why some of the people that I had and the syndicate have actually looked at doing this because it means they can really understand what their own users are doing. This whole piece of work was put together by two groups of people. One was a group from Arendt, which is my old company that I set up in the 80s, who worked in radio and music, and then radio, and then more radio, and still do radio. And on the other side, when I started this, I actually went to Pete Danton, who was then at Imagination Technologies and now is at 7 Digital. And I said, who's the best guy on the music side to work with? And he recommended my partner in this. AudienceNet did exactly what we did in the radio industry and the music industry for years. So this is a whole load of people who've just worked with music and radio for over a quarter of a century. And we've tried to put together something that can produce some of the answers that allow us to inform decisions that are really important now. You know, it's all very well for a radio station to tell their management, to tell their presenters to use lots of social media, but actually, do they know how much use is being made of social media by their users and how they use it? No, they don't generally. So this is a way that you can start doing that. And that's this work. Thanks very much.